Hello, welcome to the exhibition Sheila Butler, Other Circumstances, and to a series of video commentaries by the writers for the exhibition publication. And we'll also be joined by Sheila Butler herself. I'm in Satellite Project Space in London, Ontario, and due to pandemic restrictions, I'm on my own. But I am surrounded by 20 of Sheila Butler's remarkable drawings and paintings that span a 40-year period of her career. What a privilege to be amidst this focused retrospective. It's like being in a moment in time and space that's rich with beauty, social import, and artistic wonder. And all of the themes of Sheila's work are here. Figures in transition and conflict, mythological subjects, reconsidered through a feminist lens, and the body portrayed as a swimmer or otherwise suspended in water. This is all brought together under the title Other Circumstances, which is drawn from co-curator Pamela Edmonds' essay. I think this title beautifully captures the urgency about life experience, as well as the transitory character and mystery that bespeak Sheila Butler's work. So you'll be hearing from Pamela Edmonds, who begins her talk with a significant land acknowledgement and then moves on to open up Sheila Butler's work. Following that, you'll hear from independent curator David Liss, as well as artists Ed Pian and Julie Boyce, who astutely and playfully comment on Sheila's work. Following that, our assistant curator, Sarah Charette, will talk about the experience of interviewing Sheila for the publication. It's certainly been a great privilege for me to be co-curating this exhibition with Pamela Edmonds and to work with such a wonderful host of writers and other collaborators. And that includes Museum London as well as Arts and Humanities at Western. Working with Sheila Butler with her drawings and paintings has been a singular honor. And now I'm going to turn it over to Pamela Edmonds to begin our discussions.
Hello out there, my name is Pamela Edmonds and I am the co-curator along with Patrick Mann for Sheila Butler, Other Circumstances, which is now open finally at the Satellite Project Space in London. It is a co-presentation with Museum London and Arts and Humanities at Western University. And welcome everyone. Thank you for being here and to celebrate in the opening of the exhibition. And so first of all, I'd like to thank Patrick Mann for his ongoing commitment to the project. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad that we could finally have the show go up. And it looks amazing. I look forward to seeing it in person soon. Also to Sarah Charette for bringing all the pieces together. Thank you to Brian Meehan at Museum London for the support, and also to all the artists and writers who contributed to the publication. And of course to Sheila Butler, whose work we are celebrating. Thank you for sharing your creative visions and to introduce your work to familiar and also to new audiences. And so I'm here based in Hamilton, which is situated on the traditional territory of the Erie Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. And the land here is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. And I wish to express gratitude to all the First Nation people, Métis and Inuit people who have taken care of the land since time immemorial and who continue to do so. And my hope with this land acknowledgement is that we continue to reflect and think about the ways that we can join in and support decolonial and indigenous movements for sovereignty and self-determination. And so for me, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to meet Sheila many years ago, um, when she was on the board of a space gallery, where I was working at the time as a programming coordinator. And years later, I got to organize an exhibition with herself and Lucy Chan at Art Gallery Peterborough, in a show called Passages. And I was always have always been struck by Sheila's thoughtfulness, seen in her deep experimentation with content and form, her commitment to fair and equitable representation for artists, her generosity as an arts educator, as a mentor, as a creative collaborator, who's really committed to social change. And of course, always enjoyed her wonderfully contagious laugh, which made working with her constant joy. And I look forward when we can meet again soon and share some of those laughs together. So this focus retrospective is one that Patrick and I both felt to be an important showcase, one significant to the cultural community and to the public. It recognizes Sheila's substantial contribution and influence in London, in particular as an educator at Western for many years. And so the city is an important context for a serious consideration of her work there. And so the retrospective spans 35 years of work, paintings and drawings primarily, which is really representative of the works that Sheila's become known for. These are surreal, intuitive compositions that expand on the conventions of the figure. And the background of this particular video is Walker, which is one of the paintings in the show. And her art really deals into the mysterious connections between human consciousness and the mediated myths that shape our lived and our imagined realities. In my essay for the publication, I speak about Sheila's interest in feminist and psychoanalysis thought, and how she explores this idea of the in-between, of the liminal, of transitional states, and how she's developed a vocabulary of motifs, like swimmers and parachutists, figures on stairs. These are subjects that are often seen suspended in a world of the unfamiliar, the strange and the dangerous, passing through a kind of visual chaos, crossing into other circumstances and conditions. They're often enclosed in unknown depths in the water and the sky, and moving through permeable boundaries. Sometimes the images can be seen as perhaps disturbing, coarse, difficult, but she's less concerned with these figures, I think, as representing people per se, but more as expressive forms of energy. By showing us this kind of disarray of the dream world, Sheila's art offers to us an alternative world, where the identity, or where identities and the body are displaced. They're shifting, identities are unsettled and changing into new states of representation. And here I would say survival, in a sense, is through a kind of death, a death of all self-importance, a death of all that we think we are, a death of all pride in this sense of an illusory identity. And here the body becomes a site of political agency. And it disintegrates, it moves into and it blurs into obscurity. And I also think her art is plays into the understanding that the self isn't a permanent given, and how we categorize humanity into race and into gender can actually be destabilized and reimagined, and that we can engage with difference without assumed or imposed hierarchies. And so I think that Other Circumstances is a truly relevant project for our times. And so I hope you enjoy the exhibition. I hope to have the opportunity to, or it's been a great pleasure for me to have the opportunity to acknowledge the life and career of Sheila Butler. And it's been an honor for me to work on this project. And I hope you all enjoy it. And thank you for listening. Bye.
Well, Female Icarus to me is it's a powerful composition. I think it just has an impact. It is a work of Sheila's that I have actually seen in the past, but mainly I think it sums up a number of her approaches, the way she approaches painting, and the themes that she deals with. So to me, it really embodies her practice. I think in a lot of ways. First of all, it's figurative painting, and that's been Sheila's dominant mode, I would say. But also the way she creates compositions that are always seem to me kind of open and floating. There's always, I don't know, some kind of movement taking place, or figures in some kind of in some kind of motion, but also figures seem to be experiencing some kind of emotion. And I think that's clear in this painting. But here you see the three figures to me that are kind of going through some physical experiences. But of course, it's really, it's easy to extrapolate from that these also may represent some other kind of psychological states. And so I think in that sense, it really is a characteristic, if I can put it that way, characteristic Sheila Butler painting. And also thematically, in the title itself, Female Icarus, introduces another important element, I think, of Sheila's work, and that is it comes from a feminist perspective. In this sense, it kind of subverts a well-known myth. Icarus is a male, of course. In this case, it's a female. So, she's really looking at, ancient mythology, which was a common approach for artists. Well, it has been throughout the 20th century, but let's say, in the 1980s, early 90s in particular, there was, artists were looking back at Greek and Roman mythologies and trying, in a sense, updating those human stories into their own experiences, or into, projecting into our own worlds. So I like that, as I said, it's kind of typical for the time period, but it also is characteristic of the way that Sheila approaches these things. But like I said, in a way, this is what I like about it. It's first so it comes from a feminist perspective. So these are, and I said, and I do want to go back to, to I think the first thing I said, and what really brought me to this picture. It's a powerful image. I think it's, this idea to represent ourselves, represent who we are, is always present. And maybe because I do think there is a little bit more of that approach happening right now. I think there's kind of an exciting possibility that perhaps some younger artists would see Sheila's show and be inspired by that, and then make a connection between, let's say, her era, although Sheila's always made work. What is her era? But you know, it's about carrying those stories forward. So there is a trajectory, in a sense, and I think Sheila's very much a part of that, which you might call figurative trajectory from a feminist perspective.
Years ago, I remember Robert McCaskill telling me a story. At the time, he was the curator at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, and he was also teaching at the university, art history. And he said he would show slides, like the way images are usually shown to the students. And what was different about his approaches afterwards, he actually took the students to the gallery and took them to the vault and showed them the actual works. The students were pretty dumbfounded and completely excited to actually experience the real objects, real artworks. The first time I've ever experienced or encountered Sheila's work was through an exhibition called Drawing, a Canadian Survey, 1977 to 1982. It was curated by artist Peter Krause. It was the first time I've seen her work, and I was completely haunted by what I saw. The piece was from one of the swimmer series. It was done simply with black gestural marks with hints of fluorescent pink, shocking pink. It was a powerful drawing. There was a sense of total abandon. At the same time, I felt there's constraint. The artist knew exactly what she was doing. She was in control. Everything was just perfect. TV Medusa by Sheila Butler from 2003. This drawing is like a murder mystery unfolding. I have to make sense of the figures that are present. Medusa, a male seated figure, and a swimmer. What is mesmerizing about this work is the fact that there are many things left out, and there are clues that are given, and I have to piece everything together. Why is there a smoking gun facing Medusa with her fists clenched, her mouth open? Why is the man on the phone? And it seems time has been passing. He switches from coffee to a glass of wine. And then there's the swimmer with a hand disembodied on her head, writing cryptic notes. Anyone who knows Sheila will tell you that Sheila is a storyteller. Of the time she lived in Pittsburgh as a child, taking bus to the art classes at the library on weekends, the times living in Winnipeg, the times living up north at Baker Lake. She loves sharing her stories, and you can see this from the rich and complex narratives that she constructs in her paintings and drawings and prints. My exposure to her work when I was doing my master's degree changed the way I consider drawing. It's one of my principal practices. Thank you, Sheila, for being so inspiring.
Our friend Ed once observed that being an artist is extreme. We need those who have lived the world through their studio hearts longer than we have. Those who continue to embrace every challenge. Those who have straddled the amazing and the mortifying decade after decade. We need those who have put in the time required to trust the precision of their instincts. Those who can spot any BS at lightning speed. Those who have the experience to know that failure is necessary. We need lifelong learners. Those who have the strength of soul to make work that keeps on giving decade after decade. We need our creative elders, and Sheila Butler is one of them. Tons of people thank her for everything she has done, so here is a suggestion. Get a chocolate-covered cherry and give Sheila a toast.
Hi, my name is Sarah Charette, and I have acted as the co-curator on Other Circumstances. As a part of this, I had the pleasure of interviewing Sheila Butler herself, and the transcription of this conversation appears in the catalog for this exhibition. So interviewing Sheila Butler was an extraordinary experience, both in the fantastical sort of starstruck sense of the word, and the separated compound of extraordinary. On the one hand, as an emerging arts administrator myself, having the opportunity to delve into the life and practices of an established, well-respected, and culturally impactful artist was one that I was daunted by, but excited to take on. On the other hand, talking to Sheila herself was a very comfortable process, as she was open about her life, the struggles it entailed, and many of the ordinary aspects of it to which I found myself relating. Financial insecurity, reliance on public programming for training, and the happenstance of many events in her life brought home the notion of her humanity and growth as an artist and simply as a person. As I was given the chance to write the bulk of the questions myself, I was able to ask what I felt very interested in and passionate about learning from Sheila. And from the minute she picked up the phone, she provided a wealth of knowledge and insight in both historical, artistic happenings and her own personal experiences as a woman artist. Her frankness, especially about the difficulties and systemic issues she came up against, really resonated, given our current politically charged conversations surrounding race, gender, and inclusivity more generally. She mentioned at one point wanting to put on programming at a museum with which she worked and having no systems or administrators to support it. So she simply took on the job of organizing and facilitating the events herself. These events, as she explained, foregrounded artists with identities that were underrepresented in the arts then, in the late 60s and early 70s, and even now, including people of color, women, and even children. So the grassroots nature of this work really showed me how important it can be, just the revolutionary work of one person, and especially how much has changed and how much has yet to change in the art world. As someone just entering the arts field, I'm so grateful that I was able to plumb her extensive knowledge in this field and its growth across time, which is something that I hear many people talk about needing in this field to create a kind of holistic sense of the field, but it was something that I never truly felt like I was learning until I talked to her directly. Her candor about her beginnings, the growth and opinions she held about the arts community helped to break down some of my conceptualizations of the hierarchy and exclusivity within the arts. Moving through her career, she discussed her migration across her life from Pittsburgh to Winnipeg, to Northern Indigenous communities, to London, Ontario, and to her current home in Toronto, which show not only the kind of wide breadth of influences that she integrated into her practice over the years, but also the far-reaching impacts that she herself had on the artistic communities in these areas. Her work with Indigenous communities, with the Mentoring Artists for Women's Art, or MAWA, and simply her persistence and perseverance as a female identifying artist are truly inspiring to me and made me feel as though she had laid kind of important groundwork for the existence and success of women and marginalized individuals in the art world. The ability to talk to her opened up my eyes to a lot of concepts and personal experiences that I never would have thought converged in the way that they did. And hearing the life story of a woman with so much experience made me feel not only better about myself as a professional, but gave me a sense of optimism about the continued path of the arts as it moves into the future. Drafting questions and conducting this interview was something that I truly, thoroughly enjoyed, and I hope you enjoy reading it as well. Thank you so much.
Most people, I think, who see the show won't realize that I've never seen all this work together before because for all kinds of reasons, I had to change studios and change locations over the years. And it wasn't because I was looking for something better, it was just making life work with kids and studio and job, you know. And so I've never been able to put these all together in one place. And some of them I haven't seen for years. They've been stored somewhere or other. So I've tried to do my best to keep things in some kind of order over the years, but I only had partial control over it. So this is hugely surprising to me, and I'm very pleased. It looks better than I had imagined. I wasn't just making up imaginary themes, but they were things that I was actually living through in my daily life, and things that I had lived through from the time I was a little kid growing up, you know, and I reworked and reworked those themes that I still remembered thinking about and wondering about, you know, as I grew up. So they're images mostly that came from my experience of life itself, and how I grew up and what was important to me. One of the most important things, I think, was that when I was growing up, I was growing up in a steel mill town close to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the big public gallery was in Pittsburgh, and it was Carnegie Museum, which had an art collection. But for me, more important was that they had Saturday classes for children from the public schools in the whole area. It was called Allegheny County, of Pittsburgh proper and the towns, the mostly steel-producing towns around Pittsburgh. And I could go to those for free, just if my school sent me. And boy, that saved my life. You know, I lived for those, and I didn't know at the time. I mean, I knew absolutely nothing about the history of art at that time. We just didn't have good instruction in public school. And but the thing that turned out to be more important, although as I say, I didn't know it at the time, was that we had what at that time was real old-fashioned figure drawing. That we had live models, and we had a teacher who moved us from one figure pose to another, and we were set up on easels around a sort of stairwell area of the Carnegie Museum. And when I read about art history years later, I mean, that's how they did it in Renaissance times, you know, that the artist had a studio and hired live models and studied from the live models. And that's how we were doing it. We had other projects, but that was, I think, the most important thing, and something that I really, really worked on. But at the time, I didn't know where that approach to drawing came from. I didn't know about Italian Renaissance history or anything like that. I think that I've always, for my whole life, been aware of dreams. Like when I wake up, I would remember them at least for some time before I couldn't hang on to it anymore and it would disappear from my mind. But I always I guess I didn't think about it as part of lived reality, but I certainly thought of it as an important part of being able to muse on the important aspects of life and what I should focus on and what decisions I should make. So mostly I thought of the dreams not just as imaginary, but as ways of working out life's problems. Most people, I think, who are viewing this work over, as you say, a 35-year period now, don't realize I don't know exactly how many years, but the years of really gender inequality in the arts that I was working with. And I did what I could to make sure that I always had some place to show the work. Like, I didn't just make a batch of work and then go hunting for a gallery or something, but that I tried to temporarily organize a final outcome for whatever body of work I was working on. But I had to pretty much make do with what I could get, because the gender inequality was highly, highly different than it is now. And so those requirements, as I say, before, having enough money to keep this practice going, and also overcoming whatever social inequalities existed at that time. So I never was angry or upset about that. I just was finding ways to keep life going, and so that's how I remember it. But it's certainly easier for me to cope socially now than it used to be when I was young.